And welcome everybody to the FireWife Summit, Day 2. I would love to thank and have everybody thank our sponsors that have allowed me to keep this event free for everybody to attend, and that is MomWeb's hosting, Carney Strong, I'm representing the t-shirt, I am a member, Multimedia Content Solutions, Mouse Ear Magic Travel, Laura Sierra, Appetite for Design, and Stitching the Night Away. I want to thank them for their support of the fire community and getting this information out to everyone. So tonight we have two firewives that are going to be speaking with us today, and Barbara Crump is our first one, and she was one of them. If you read the emails, she was one of them. I was super excited to come in because she was giving me some resources to go and reach out to when I said I was going to do the summit. But then it was super cute because then she totally volunteered herself, and I'm like, yes, of course I want that. Of course. Because you're already in our community. You've already been, I mean, you are a professional. This is what you do. And I think I'll let you go into that more of it because I would just be reading off boring. You can tell us more of what you do instead. But I love it because you are in the group, so you are seeing exactly what so many of the women that are here are talking about and dealing with. So I love that you can bring all of this perspective in with your professional training and also the fact that you're living it.
Yeah.
So thank you for being here tonight, Barbara.
Thanks. I'm so glad to be here, and I was glad this worked out. So can you hear me okay and see me okay? Okay.
I can, yep.
Okay. It's kind of distracting to not watch myself while I'm doing this, but I'm gonna try to not do that. So, but if you see me kind of looking around, that's probably why. But yeah, I was so glad to see you were gonna be doing this, Val, because it's so important and so close to my heart for lots of reasons. One is I am an LPC, licensed professional counselor, and an LMFT, marriage and family therapist. I'm also married to a firefighter, and I'm very involved in the firefighter first responder community and around us. And so it's kind of like personal, professional, and then just community wise. I love that we're just talking about this. So there is kind of a disclaimer. So I originally grew up in New York, right? So Long Island. And so I tend to talk fast. I use my hands. I'm kind of loud. I laugh loud. So I'm also kind of direct too. So I kind of apologize in advance if I'm, I can be polite, but I can also be pretty direct. So I might just kind of say things like that I'm really thinking.
Well, the coach in me right now just wants to shoot you down and say, you just be you.
Okay, I'll just be me.
You just be you. Yeah.
I'll leave an email address so you guys can file complaints if you want to, but right? I'll just be me. Okay. So yeah, so I grew up in Long Island, so I'm a little bit more direct, but also, of course, was didn't have any direct ties to 9/11, but remember, vividly what that was like growing up in the area. So about 9 years ago is when my husband, 10 years ago actually, is when my husband decided to switch his career to become a firefighter. But we've been married for 16 years in December. So I remember pre-firefighter and post-firefighter husband. Some of the stuff I'm going to talk about today, like the enabling stuff versus and the boundaries and supporting. Trust me, all those bad patterns I already had before he was a firefighter, but they became even more important that I not do as we kind of live this lifestyle and experience the stress that his job brings, right? So I'm not perfect. I still work on all of these things. But I think that, the enabling versus supporting and helping and having boundaries is something that I remember both sides of not doing well and then also doing better at. Mm-hmm. So I've chose the topic boundaries in the Minefield because I think I started to feel like living with him, especially post-firefighter career, was like being in a minefield. I wasn't sure what was going to set him off. I know a little bit better now. But for example, I discovered that when he can't find the pizza cutter, that he's going to slam every drawer in the entire kitchen trying to find it several times, because guess what? At the station, he knows where everything is, and then he says he comes home and he can't find it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can better believe I went out and bought like, 5 pizza cutters, right? So he can find them, because I want to avoid those minefields. I want to
Mm-hmm.
avoid, but I can't always do that. So I do have to kind of practice boundaries for that when he is having an issue with the pizza cutter. I'm not getting sucked into the drama and feeling like I have to fix everything for him, and make sure everyone's happy and okay. So like a number of years ago, I had a really frank discussion with him that sometimes it was easier when he was just not around. And part of that had to do with the feeling like I was in a minefield, not knowing where those explosions were going to come from, but also that I was so busy trying to manage his emotions, protect him and shield him from things, make sure things were quiet, calm, so he wouldn't get upset, manage everyone's emotions, make sure they were happy, having a good time. I mean, I was just carrying too much, and it was exhausting. So for me, it was just easier when he wasn't there, because in my mind, I thought I could manage everything better when he wasn't there. So we kind of had to have a frank discussion about, we don't want to be that couple that starts to go their separate ways. And we had to really start doing the work that it takes to kind of live this lifestyle. So I have something that I think is super important, and work with families on, first responders and their families, and even myself, is to not enable, which is so exhausting and really doesn't help. So the first part of that is kind of understanding what enabling is. So enabling in terms of like kind of maybe the lifestyle that we live, or even in a lot of relationships, is to try to shield my firefighter or from natural consequences to his choices or behaviors. And so, for example, it could be things like if he chooses to not share with me that he's had a really rough call, which that's fine. We've worked out between us what works, which is that he tells me if he has a rough call, he doesn't have to go into the gory details right then or ever, but it's important that he share with me so I kind of know where his head's at, right? But if he chooses not to do that, I can't be responsible for making sure that everything is just perfect so he doesn't freak out, right? So not shielding him from the natural consequences of some things. So what I see happen a lot in my life and the families that I work with is that they kind of create bubbles around the firefighter, and it's one thing to do it every once in a while. It's another thing when it becomes a habit and you're doing it all the time. So
I know for me, I've definitely have done that over time. I mean, I can look back and see when I have absolutely done that. It's like, well, that made myself miserable and nobody was happy.
Right, and it didn't like work really, right?
No.
Yeah, and I think sometimes they get even like more frustrated because I feel like they're being managed, like right. So it's like I'll say, well, you need to calm down, or you need to be nice, or don't get upset, and ever in the history of the world has someone saying don't be upset or calm down ever really worked.
Right. Or just ramped it up.
Yeah, it probably just ramps it up. Yeah. So I have a pretty like kind of handy little chart. I'm not sure you guys can see this. Can you?
No, I can't see it.
Okay. So this chart talks about the differences between like helping and enabling. So when we're doing something for someone else that they can do for themselves, or we're shielding them, or we're managing their emotions, we're enabling. When we're supporting or helping is when we're empathizing, we're believing the other person can do it, and maybe we're doing it every once in a while when they ask for help, but otherwise we're not taking care of what they need to take care of. So what happens if we continue to kind of enable and not let people feel the consequences of their choices and behaviors is that we feel like we're loving them and we're helping them out, but we could be creating a pattern where it takes them even longer to realize or to know or to make the changes they need to make because they don't have any real consequences for it. So as I kind of like move through, what enabling is, right? I just kind of want to give you a list of what it sounds like, right? So enabling is shielding a firefighter from stressful information or events, taking over all or most of the household management or parenting, managing all the commitments, covering for him or her with excuses to others about a bad attitude or being absent, taking over and scheduling his care or his self-care. And then you can also kind of know when you're enabling because you're doing a lot of threatening, but you're not really following through. Sound familiar to anybody?
Oh yeah, to him, to the kids.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly, right? Exactly. It's not just, that's kind of the crazy thing is if you're doing it in one area, you're usually doing it in a bunch of areas, usually a pattern, right? Yeah. So as you move from enabling to support, you can't really talk about that without talking about boundaries. So at a very basic level, boundaries are just where you end and the other person begins, and what is okay and not okay for you. What is okay and not okay for you. So boundaries can be like, instead of saying, hey, I told my firefighter he couldn't drink any more than 2 beers a night after, right? It's like, okay, I set a boundary. I told my firefighter he can drink more than 2 beers a night. It's like, well, okay, I'm glad that you're figuring out what you care for and don't care for, but that's not actually setting a boundary, right? You're kind of laughing about, why that's not setting a boundary.
Well, I mean, for one, you're not going to do anything if they have the third
right?
beer. What's the plan with the third beer?
Right, exactly.
Are you going to divorce them or what?
Yeah, it's like, oh wow, okay, So it's not clear, right? First of all, it's not clear. And then the other is that it's boundaries aren't telling other people what they can and can't do. Boundaries aren't a way to control another person. Boundaries are telling other people what is okay and not okay for us, right? So it's kind of a rookie mistake, but everyone makes it when they're first starting to set boundaries, is to kind of say that, oh, I told someone else they could do this or they couldn't do this. It could also sound like, hey, instead of saying, I told him not to yell at me anymore, or I told my mom if she calls me again and yells at me, not to yell at me anymore on the phone. Really what you kind of want to say is, I told my mom if she chooses to yell at me on the phone, I will ask her to please calm down. If she chooses not to, then I will hang up and she can call me back when she's calm, right? So that sounds kind of different than I told her not to. It's just telling her what I will and won't do, right? So a rookie mistake is to kind of tell people that what they can and can't do. Another one is to use the word boundary. So don't use the word boundary. People don't like to feel like they're being managed, yeah? So not a great idea to say, hey, I'm about to set a boundary with you, right? I wouldn't respond well to that. I don't think, usually people don't. So just leave the word boundary out of it. You just have to tell them what it is you need to tell them. And then the other is to kind of have something that you can follow through with. So it could be, I told him, I don't like when he drinks more than 2 beers. It scares me. If he does it again, I said I would be spending the night at my mom's. Something kind of like that, right? Everyone kind of has to do their own thing, but something that's okay and not okay for you, and what it would look like to kind of follow through, and what you'll do if it happens again. Does that kind of make sense? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because you don't want to put them on the defense. You just want to explain where you stand.
Yeah.
On the topic.
Yeah. Just kind of explain where you stand on the topic and what you're gonna do. Yeah. And super important, I'm gonna assume everyone here, loves their firefighter or wants to be in a marriage with their firefighter. And if you do, you want to affirm the relationship first. So it's like, look, it's really important to me. I love you. And that's why I'm sharing this hard thing with you. But it's really uncomfortable after the second beer. And so I don't feel safe. And that's why next time I'm going to go to my mother's. Does that kind of make sense? And you made a really good point, Val, when you said, like, you don't want to put them on the defensive, right? So one way to try to diffuse that a little bit is just reaffirm the relationship. This is why I'm doing it, because I love you. And it's important to me that I feel safe here and we have a good relationship and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So boundaries kind of help move us from enabling to supporting. So supporting is doing something once in a while, but not all the time. Supporting is empathizing, but not fixing the problem for him or her, right? So I'm sorry you had a really bad shift. It sounds like it was rough. I hope that what can we do to help you kind of have a good day? Or do you need to tell us that you're going to take some time and maybe take a 30-minute break, right? And then come back. But we still have this commitment for the rest of the day. I hope you can keep it, right? Because too often I hear first responder families, oh, well, he had a bad shift or he had a bad, and so continually kind of letting him check out of the family activities, right? So that's enabling.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those kind of, I think, help kind of move from, there's tons more, right, that I could go into. I want to leave some space for questions and things like that, but that kind of gives an overall, I can see some of the chats as they're coming up. That kind of gives a picture of like what it looks like to move from some enabling to supporting.
Well, I know for me, it's an easy picture because I'm looking at it going, I can pretty much pinpoint ways that I have done that over the years. I've got lots of years to pick from. So I can look back and it's just like, oh, yeah. So, and then I cycled him through because it was just enabling. So then he's not dealing with things and he's not coming back and being a part of the family as much because, of course, I'm just letting him be a little separate over here.
Yeah. Like he gets to be in the bubble wrap, safe. Let's keep him safe and okay. And right. And then the more he or she or the firefighter, or really anyone in our lives who we're enabling, the more we kind of let that happen, right? And then like you said, if the tendency is to kind of put them off in a safe room by themselves, right? Well, then they become more detached and they actually start to get worse, right? Yes. In some cases, because they need support. They need to be out. They need to be doing things.
They need to be normal. They need to come back and be normal and be a part of the family. And yeah, exactly. Definitely. I know that that's made a huge change. We got to go out for the walks. We got to walk the dog. We got to, take them to the groomers, all of that normal stuff. I don't need to put it all on my plate.
Yeah.
Shared responsibilities.
That's right. You live here too. Like more than just one person lives there, right? I mean,
right. Yes.
You can't do it all.
No. So what do you do if your firefighter won't get help or is not really open to it? Doesn't think there's a problem?
Doesn't think there's a problem. Okay. So the very 100% guaranteed kind of, I'm not supposed to say guaranteed, but one of the most consistent ways that I can see to a clear direction to do when that happens is you have to take care of yourself first. So the more you're managing your emotions, your self-care, all your stuff, and you're not taking care of their stuff for them, then you are what you need to be for yourself, your kids, your family, right? But also that person is feeling the consequences of their actions. And just depending on how extreme, I guess I want to say, it gets, I've seen once one person in a couple starts taking care of themselves and stops enabling the other person, you'd be surprised in 6 months I have the other person in the office saying, now I have a problem, right? Now I have a problem. Now I see. Now I get it. The longest I've seen it take is a year, but it's almost like clockwork. Within 6 months, I see the other half come in and say, okay, now I have a problem and I'm ready to work. But again, not necessarily doing all this so that you can manipulate them into getting help, but because you need to take care of yourself. And if they don't see that they have a problem, you may be part of the reason they aren't seeing they have a problem.
Mm-hmm. I know for a lot of what I coach is, once you start taking care of yourself, then other people are going to start following suit, because they're going to see, for one, that you're getting happier, and they want a piece of that too.
I like that.
They don't want to keep being miserable. They really don't. People don't really want to be miserable. They just don't realize how miserable they are when we have been enabling them.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that's good to point out that, like, yes, if I get better and healthier and take care of myself, I'm also not enabling, and maybe he feels the consequences more. But also, he also looks over and says, oh my gosh, she's like living her life. She's happy. She's not weighed down like I am. I kind of want a piece of that, right? So there's like this positive part of it too.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way, and I hate to even put it there, it's the way we train our dogs, right? I mean, it's not that we're training people, but positive reinforcement works so well, I think, that I know I've really tried to work more on that, because, yeah, yelling at the kids, yelling at people, I've done that for so many years, and that just didn't bring me anything.
Right. That's such a good point. Being positive, they're like, okay, I can do this. I want what she had.
Right. Yeah, I want a piece of what she had.
Yeah, exactly.
So how are you going to go about setting some of the boundaries if they're getting sticky and not wanting to?
Oh, girl. Well, typically, when you first start setting boundaries again, or just telling people what you will and won't do, in the beginning, expect resistance, or expect it to be uncomfortable. People aren't typically going to respond super well unless they're really healthy and they have boundaries too.
Right. So, very good point. Because if they don't have boundaries, they're not even realizing that needs to happen.
Yeah. So just be prepared for that. There's going to be some resistance. It could look like fear, obligation, guilt, shame. You always used to do it. What's wrong with you now? I liked you before you started going to these FireWife summits, right? It could be all of those things. But you just stay strong, because remember, this is about affirming the relationship. This is going to be better for our relationship. It's going to be better for me to take care of myself, and just stay kind of like you were saying earlier, stay in the positive about it, that this is going to be a good thing for both of you in the end.
It looks like we do have a couple of questions. Let's see, Jamie says, what if they just get angry with you when you try and get them to do things for themselves? They see it as if you don't love them.
Oh no. So the person who believes when you start setting boundaries that you don't love them, so anger, fear, obligation, guilt, and shame, you can think of it even as like fogs, 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 anger, got that? I'm kind of making it with my fingers. So you can kind of expect that, and it's okay. You just circle back and say, honey, I love you. Remember, you're not responsible for his response or anger, right? I love you, sweetie. I'm doing this because I think it's going to be better for our relationship. I hope you can see that. I mean, if he's angry and he's destructive and disrespectful, that's not okay. You can't be destructive and disrespectful, but people can be frustrated or angry, right? So you may expect and get some anger.
Especially if you've been doing stuff for a really long time. I think that's probably one thing to point out too. It's not like you're going to throw all of the boundaries on them at once.
Yeah, that's I need to add that. That's like a fourth rookie mistake, right? All the boundaries all at once, right? Yeah, no. Good idea. Yeah, that's a good point. Start small. Start something that's reasonable, something you can follow through with, right?
Yeah, my mom did that at 50. She had her 50th birthday, and she just like, bam, life has changed. And we're like, whoa, Mom. Whoa.
Right.
Okay, wow. We're on board, but wow, that was 50 years of anger all at once.
It all came out, right? Yeah.
Let's see, Shelly had brought up a good point that she said her years in Al-Anon have really helped her.
I can only imagine. Yes, absolutely.
With letting people take care of their own emotions while being there to empathize. Yeah. I think
Ah,
it's all those classes are always good. I mean, you're always going to pull
mhm.
information and good information out of them.
Yeah. I kind of like Brene Brown has like the big acronym, right? So what boundaries do I need to set to stay in my integrity and be as generous as possible? So
Hmm.
kind of remembering that this is about love. This is about being generous. I can be generous with people in my life, my firefighter included, when I'm not resenting it, I'm not stressed out, I'm not managing everything.
Hmm. Yeah, because you want them to be the best person they can be as well.
Mhm.
Let's see,
Yeah.
discussing boundaries. Oh, this is probably a good one for Marie. Marie mentions discussing the boundaries and coming to a mutually agreed boundary is usually a good idea. Can you talk about, I don't know, I kind of go back and forth with this mutual boundary idea. So maybe you could talk about that a
Mhm.
little bit.
Okay, so boundaries are where I and another person begins. So maybe kind of what I'm hearing is like, how do you negotiate or compromise on things where you both kind of feel like it's important to you, maybe, or something? I'm
That'd
trying
probably
to
be a
come up
better word instead of the boundary, I bet. Maria, is
with
that more what you mean? Let's see, compromised by one person sleeping in a different room. Let me just read this whole thing instead of pieces. So discussing the boundaries and coming to a mutually agreed upon boundary is usually a good idea. And one of the examples you gave about going to mom's after 2 beers, compromised by one
that.
person sleeping in a different room. If that doesn't work, then reevaluate the boundary. That way you're calling them out on it and the effects.
Okay. So the watch out is that boundaries are not about controlling another person. So if we're setting a boundary to in the hopes that there's going to be an outcome or a change in their behavior, we might be disappointed. It's really about what's okay and not okay for me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I hope that he would, if I'm using that example, I would hope that he would not, I would hope he would change his behavior, but in the end, I have to leave that. I can't control that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just telling him what's okay and not okay for
Mm-hmm.
me
And what you are going to do to
and what I'm going
stay
to
in a
do.
safe place,
Right.
to
And
where
because,
you feel safe.
that's right. And I love him. And that's why I'm doing it, because I want us to have a good relationship. I don't
Mm-hmm.
feel safe. And you reaffirm the relationship.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Marie, did that clarify a little bit? You said sorry, son interrupted. So yeah, get back to us when you can. Does anybody else have any questions for Barbara? Okay, she says yes. We got it. Good. There's
Yay.
any more questions? I love the boundary issues. It's something that has made a huge difference in my life when I finally figured out how I was changing my behavior based on who I was around and
Mm,
how I was allowing people to treat, and I just completely lost myself because I had no boundaries.
yeah. Right. Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
miserable, miserable. And I didn't want to do what my mom had done. I didn't want to hit 50 and go, done. No.
Load.
Yeah.
Right.
I was
Right.
like, I don't want to. Let's learn by her
Yeah.
example, and I'm just going to ease into all of this.
Yeah.
Let's see. Stephanie says, earlier you gave the example of not just saying, don't get upset, don't get angry.
Mm.
Can you give us an example of what to say instead?
I see you're upset. I see you're angry. Is there something that I did or we need to address? Or otherwise you can just keep it moving. Now, people can't be destructive and disrespectful when they're angry. That's not okay. That's not okay for me. That's not okay for anybody to do that, right? But if people are frustrated, that's okay as long as they're not destructive and disrespectful. Now, if you do see situations, and I hear this, like, hey, my firefighter or whatever, someone, they get frustrated with the kids, and that's very hard to see, right? Yeah, I see that a lot. And then people want to step in, right? So
Mm-hmm.
here's an idea. If it's not destructive and disrespectful and it's not abusive, okay, pull aside later and say, it really seemed, yeah, what are you feeling right now? That's good, Marie. Um, it really seemed like you got frustrated, and I know you don't want to, well, you have to be careful. And I'm going to assume you don't want to blow up on the kids, right? So is there something I can do to help you, sweetie? I don't want that to happen. But not stepping in that moment, really waiting until later.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I haven't had situations necessarily with my husband where I felt like he was getting angry with the kids, but I've had even ones recently, like at a campfire, where I was feeling like my husband was making some irresponsible decisions, but no one was really in danger, but I could feel myself wanting to get pulled in and to stop it and to interrupt what was happening, his parenting.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to check myself and say, okay, it's going to be okay. He needs to do this. He needs to experience this. And sure enough, later he was like, I don't think that was a good idea what I did. It's like, right, it was not a good idea what you did.
Especially with parenting, because we as moms, we learned by process of messing it all up too. But they don't have as much time usually to mess up as much. So, and we've already gone through it. So we're just like, just do it this way. I've already done it this way. So.
That's right. That's such a good point. Yeah.
Kristen, I feel like there is no rationalizing with my husband when he gets upset.
Mm-hmm. That's okay. There may not be, I mean, so in general, we talk about, like, with the brain, that there's 3 stages when people are upset or kids are upset. So first they have to regulate, then you can relate, and then you reason. So he may not, if he hasn't he's not regulated, and you can't relate or reason. So that could be good to just step aside. Seems like you're upset. I really would like to talk to you about this when you're not upset. Mm-hmm. I think it's important for our relationship.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Stephanie's got another good one. He also doesn't like it when I blame every argument or bad reaction to his job. From my perspective, I'm trying to be understanding and I guess use that as a scapegoat, but sometimes that annoys him.
Yeah, when the job's the problem, yeah, right. Like, mm-hmm. I hear that a lot too. It can't all be the job, mm-hmm. and it can't all be the job. So then, then it needs to be taking. Is he taking responsibility, or are we as people taking responsibility for our own stuff, even if it's outside of the job? Mm-hmm. If it's not the job, then are you just a jerk? I don't know. What's mm-hmm. What's the right. You fill me in on what's going on, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if there's not a reason for it, then we got to talk still. Mm-hmm. All right, perfect. All right, well, I am so thankful. I'll keep an eye on, okay, she says yes. I'm so thankful that you were here. I know we could keep talking on this whole boundaries issue for a really long time, and we're going to have to close it up. Do you have any last thoughts that you would want to leave everybody with as far as these boundaries?
Oh, you know what? The good thing about boundaries, if you're learning how to do them, you're going to get a lot of practice, right? So don't give up. Don't get discouraged. This isn't a one time and you it doesn't work out and so you give up. Just keep trying. It takes a while, especially if it's a new skill.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you so much for being here tonight. I really appreciate you.
Of course. Bye.